I forgot my chair. Okay. I sat down and I forgot my chair. Okay, but we're here. Welcome. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to yet another community watch party for the Pantheon developer stream. As you can tell, I'm a little bit extra rusty today because, you know, I realized as I was getting ready for the show today that it felt like it had been an extra long time since we've done one of these. And I realized that that's because that's true. It's been 2 whole months since we have gathered here together, because last month in August, in lieu of the normal monthly developer update streams that the devs do, they instead did a gameplay stream with Code Carnage, which was awesome, and totally better than the normal video newsletters that they do, because we got to see lots of new stuff, and it was just, that was actually one of the best streams that one of the best gameplay streams that they have that they've ever done. But I realized we haven't had I didn't do a community watch party for that, because instead, for those big gameplay reveals, I will take notes while I'm watching it so that I can make a summary video about it as soon as possible and release that later. So it's been 2 whole months since we have just had a chance to just kind of chill out. I'm still kind of out of breath, so I appreciate all of you for coming here a little bit early. This is the pre-show. The pre-show, for those of you who aren't aware what we're doing. The dev stream itself is going to be starting in about 23 minutes. And until then, we're just gonna kind of chill out, take some time to relax here and catch up, because we have 2 whole months to catch up on. The dev stream tonight is going to be, looks to be a pretty good one. It's going to be covering world building, which is always a hot topic, and specifically the zone of Wild's End, which is the halfling home city, and the little bit of concept art that they posted to tease it looked really, really good. And yeah, as Kalok just pointed out, actually, this is technically not the first time that we have seen Wild's End. If you'll remember, or maybe you have seen on YouTube way back in December 2016, speaking of Code Carnage, it was actually the very first time Visionary Realms ever streamed gameplay with Code Carnage, was December 2016, and the first zone when they logged in, the first zone that they visited was in fact Wild's End. And even back then, the zone looked awesome. Really vibrant colors. It looked really well done, and that was made almost entirely with just Unity store assets, like just placeholder. So, you know, for those of you who aren't really aware of their process, in the early days, for quite a while, they did the majority of their world building with Unity store assets that were kind of prefabricated, and the world builders, instead of having to make every single asset from scratch, they would take these Unity store assets, they would just buy them, somebody else made, and then just kind of place them in the world however they wanted. And the reason they did that was because it allowed them, because Pantheon is a crowdfunded game, it allowed them to put zones together much more quickly and efficiently and cost effectively, so that they could do those reveals with Code Carnage and have something to play in, so that they could actually show what the gameplay was like. And you know, even though it was all placeholder, it still was kind of like representative anyway of what they were going for. So we saw that in 2016, but now, fast forward, kind of long story short, obviously making an entire game, an entire full-scale MMO world entirely out of Unity store assets that other people, you know, lots of other random artists have made. It's not really sustainable. It's not really performant to do it that way. And so now for a while, they've been in this process of kind of going back and replacing those placeholder assets with their own in-house handmade custom assets. And that hopefully is what we're going to be seeing more of tonight in Wild's End, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's always good to actually, even if it's just screenshots, just actually see the world itself. Hey, Montana, China, Donler TV is also here. How you guys doing? Kalok said Cope played a rogue then too. You're right, good memory. And that also, to bring things full circle, that was also the class that he played in the last stream last month. I would definitely encourage everyone, regardless of how long you've been following Pantheon, to go back and watch some of those earliest streams and just see how different it was back then. You know, there's still obviously a lot of similarities. Fundamentally, there's a lot of similarities, but there's also a lot of differences, and it's really interesting to see that contrast. I've become even more aware of that while I've been working on the Library of Pantheon that you guys might be aware of, that I've talked about here before, which chronicles the entire development process of Pantheon from day one until now, and the goal with the library is to make all of that accessible to everyone and make it very easily searchable, so that everybody can get that perspective in that context, because I think that's really, really important. I think a lot of people are going to view the project differently when they have access to all of that. So, but, you know, until then, the library is slated to release next month in October. But even until then, even, you know, after the stream tonight, you can just pop over to Pantheon's YouTube channel real quick and just go back to like the early, you know, hit the videos tab and scroll down to the earliest videos that they released, and it's like night and day. It's really interesting to see how the game has evolved and improved over time. Goofy Warrior guy says, I want to see how good halflings look. Yeah, that would be... I wonder if we'll see that, the actual like character models. I know they've been kind of previewing them for a while, but yeah, it would be cool if you could actually see a halfling running around Wild's End, you know, like a newbie halfling. That would be cool to see it all together. Donler calls it Kelethins, and yeah, seriously, I'm here. I'm gonna pull up the just the promo that Pantheon put out for this dev stream tonight. Let's switch over. Look at this. Doesn't that... I don't know about you, but I immediately thought of Kelethyn. I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm not saying that they're just ripping off Kelethyn. I think that's great. But the platforms and the ramps are very reminiscent. I mean, let's see if I can... For those of you who had the misfortune of missing out on EverQuest. Oh yeah, this is a beautiful picture. Oh, come on. Where'd you go? I wanna compare and contrast. Whoops, where'd it go? There it is. Like, doesn't... I don't know about you, but there's some similarities there. The color palette is very different. This is a lot of browns and greens, and halflings have a lot more like blues and purples, and even some yellows, which that's cool. That's cool. But yeah, I wonder, you know, this is just a piece of concept art. It's just a concept. If we can see some actual in-game assets, it'll be interesting to see how much overlap there is, because I think it would be awesome to have another, you know, a city of platforms in the trees and tree houses. I will say though, I couldn't help but notice in this concept art that there's handrails, at least on the platforms, maybe not on the ramps, but like one of the most iconic things about Kevlyn, or actually it's the opposite here. There's handrails on the ramps, but not on the platforms. One of the best things about Kevlyn, one of the best and worst things, is falling off. As a newbie, you're still trying to like get your bearings, and as you can tell, this city was incredibly disorienting because all the platforms kind of looked the same, and it was easy to get lost. And if you weren't watching where you're going, you would just fall right off the edge. And you know, if you're level 1 or 2 or something, you don't have many hit points. Even that fall it pretty much spells instant death, which is, you don't really see in MMOs these days anymore. You know, things are a lot more kind of, I don't even know if handholdy is the right word, but kind of like, you know, it's a lot less dangerous, a lot more kind of, you know, you got your bumpers at the bowling alley so you don't stray too far off the course, you know. But there's something, as frustrating as it is at the time, there's something kind of just mystifying and intriguing and even addicting about having a world that is that just inherently dangerous. Like that's not even you know, mob like combat being dangerous. That's just the world itself just inherently like it just doesn't really care about you. And I think that's great. I think that's actually really important, that, you know, it doesn't feel like the world is catering to you and you know, going out of its way to make sure you have like an enjoyable time, you know. Like obviously you want it to be fun, but some of the fun over the long term is just having to learn things like that. Like, well, maybe I should actually watch where I'm going there aren't any railings here. You know, I'm getting at a little bit of a soapbox, but I think there's a lot of you here that will agree. But anyway, so that's that. This is all we got to go off so far, but we'll see what we have tonight. Doid's Topster says, what time is the stream? The dev stream is going to be starting in 12 minutes at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. So this is just kind of, we're just hanging out, we're just chatting. I'm probably not going to be able to stay too late after the stream. You know, after you know, after we actually watch the stream, I like to kind of recap and give some of my thoughts on it. Just unfortunately, I just don't have that much time. I've got to get to bed because I'm pretty soon after, because I need to get up stupidly early. But you know, one of the nice things about doing these watch parties is that we can also kind of discuss it in real time. I really try not to talk over the developers while they're talking, but I'll slip in some of my thoughts if I have some reactions as we go, and would love to hear your thoughts as well. And we just kind of just casual, just hang out and talk about what we're seeing. Hey, Sutarian. Good to have you back. Good to see you. It's been a while. Yeah, things have been great on my end. A little bit busy, but it's not a bad thing. Everything's going good. I will say it'll be a lot better though when the Library of Pantheon is done and out in the public, in the hands of the community where it belongs. Flying Jack says Wild's End has circular platforms. Kelem has octagonal platforms. Totally different. You're right. How did I not notice that? What am I thinking? Ridiculous. Yeah, a lot of people are talking about the fences on the platforms. That's something I'm gonna be paying like an irrational amount of attention to when during the stream tonight is what has railings, because it seems like you're right. In Kelem, like some things had railings, some things didn't, and it kind of looks like, again, in the concept art, it's so hard. Like I shouldn't really be looking into concept art too much like that, because I think that becomes a problem when people extrapolate too many conclusions just out of it's a simple piece of concept art that Jason probably put together in like 15 minutes. I mean, a lot of times the end result in game does end up resembling the concept art pretty well because they put a lot of thought into it, but we just gotta wait and see. Well, it's not that big of a deal. Oh, Keld says 52, yes, loved it, but on dial-up internet, you fell through the lifts and would dial up. That's a really great point. I forgot about that. The lifts, elevators are a tough thing, actually, in MMOs, and especially back then, because like you said, if there was any sort of like latency, where the server thought that your character was and where the client thought your character was, as far as elevation goes, that could get that if that wasn't perfectly synced up. Yeah, that could cause some problems. So yeah, even something as seemingly simple as an elevator is actually not. It's actually a little bit more complicated. I wonder. I'm trying to remember what Pantheon devs have said about elevators. Like, obviously, the technology has come a long way, and latency isn't as nearly as bad as it used to be because we're not all on dial-up. But I'm trying to think. Like, I know we saw an elevator in the Tower of the Reckless Magician stream in 2017. That was a long time ago, though. We haven't seen any lifts since then. I wonder if we'll see any in Wild's End. That would be kind of interesting. I'm trying to remember if they've even talked about that. I'm sure there will be somewhere, but yeah, we haven't seen any of those in a while. Ucrads86 says that pick isn't accurate unless you turn your gamma way up. You're right. This is that screenshot of Kelem that I showed is, I think, a much more modern picture as far as like lighting and draw distance goes, because you're right though, like again, back then with the old machines and the old graphics, even though it may not look that nice by today's standards, that screenshot that I showed was still a lot better. It still looks a lot nicer than it did when you were actually staring at your screen back in like 1999 or 2000 or whatever. Yeah, you're totally right about that. It was that was just the nature of the tech at the time. It was really hard to even see any sort of distance at all, which really did make navigating Kelem even more difficult. Goofy Warrior guy says when Jared Pullen talks about his art, he always sounds like Bob Ross. I think that's a really accurate comparison. I do enjoy both of those people. I enjoy listening to Jared Pullen. I enjoy listening to Bob Ross. I wonder if we'll see him in this stream. I also wonder, that reminds me too, because they also got a new environment artist, and if you watched my video, then that I just put up a few days ago on my YouTube channel, by the way, youtube.com/BazgrimTV, you would know that I talked about that. It was reviewing the latest dev roundtable. They talked about that Tim Schuler is on the Visionary Realms team now as an environment artist, and so I kind of wonder if we'll see him. I wonder if we'll hear from him in this stream tonight. That'd be kind of cool, because I from listening to the roundtable, I was under the impression that he has been very involved in the world building of Wild's End. So yeah, it'd be good to hear from the man himself. They might actually be going live right now. 5 minutes of, maybe they're getting a little bit of an early start. I have their stream up on one of my other screens, and it just went from offline to an ad. Yeah, it says starting soon. That's pretty cool. Hey Geeky One, welcome. You're just in time. I think it's going to be, the dev stream's going to be starting up here any minute now. K-Lock says it'd be kind of cool if Wild's End was misty down at ground level, which is why everything was built up into the trees. That would look cool. That would look cool. Geeky One says popcorn takes 3 minutes. Be right back. That's perfect. I think that's gonna be just about right. I'm gonna get my headphones ready to go here just in case. Hey, Ziplocks, you did make it just in time. Perfect timing. Welcome. And that reminds me real quick, Ziplocks just reminded me because he recently joined my Patreon page, which I don't actually talk about very often. But I think it's especially relevant now because another exciting thing that's been going on is that on my Patreon page a long time ago, I set a community goal of reaching 25 patrons, and I said that once we reach 25 patrons, that I would create a Discord channel for BazgrimTV that we can all hang out in, and we are at 24 right now. We're at 24, and the reason I picked 25 is because I figured at 25 it just seemed in my mind the right amount of people that, like, if there's 25 people that are willing to actually join the Patreon page and make monthly donations, and I figured if there's that many people willing to do that, then there'd be plenty of people willing to join this Discord, which will be freely open to everyone, by the way. But I want, before I start a Discord server, I didn't want to just do it arbitrarily. Like, I want to make sure that it's going to be active and well taken care of, and that the timing is right. And I think it's gonna end up being just about right once we hit 25 patrons. I think the timing of launching that Discord server would be just about right. And in fact, the Discord server is already set up and ready to go for the most part. So I just wanted to make everybody aware of that, because you might not, because I don't talk about it all that often. But if you're interested in supporting BazgrimTV in more ways, or you just want to be the one to kick off the Discord channel that we can all hang out in and talk about Pantheon every day, not just once a month here on Twitch. We can talk about Pantheon all you want in the Discord channel. Head over to patreon.com/BazgrimTV and you can check out the different donation options over there. That would be great. I would really appreciate it, because my patrons are awesome and they keep me going. And there's also, I haven't put it on the Patreon page yet, but in the Discord channel, actually patrons have already been invited to the preview of the Discord server. We've been kind of hanging out in our own, like, secret hideout. You know, it's kind of quiet, but it's nice. And patrons, when it's opened up to everybody, though, patrons will still have like a special role and special color for their username and some private channels to hang out in. So that's that, and let's head right on over to the dev stream, which I believe they're muted. I heard audio. Is it just me? I'm gonna refresh, but I think they're muted. I think Ronik just forgot. Yep. Wow, I hope he notices this sooner rather than later. Okay, good. Yeah, he just forgot. What a noob. It's just a matter of time until he looks at chat. So it's just Ronik and Joppa tonight. Ronik and Joppa. Yeah. All right. Great start. It's so classic though. I mean, I can't give him crap. It's such an easy thing to do. That's classic Twitch right there. I think he knows. I know he knows. I can tell based on his face. I know, lip reading. I wish I was better at lip reading. We could just lip read the whole time. I almost feel like he does he not have control over his own audio? I feel like he's waiting for somebody to fix it. Yeah, he knows. This is an intense start.
Are we good, folks? Can you hear us out there?
There it is.
Having some technical difficulties.
There it is. We're good now.
All right.
Hey,
let's start this all over again.
Me too.
I don't know how much you guys heard, but let's try it again.
We heard nothing.
This is our September 9th, 2021 Pantheon Rise of the Fallen development stream. I am your host, David Ronik Schlau, and as much as most of people want me muted, that's not going to happen. With me tonight is our creative director and producer, Chris Joppa Perkins.
Hey, everybody. Glad to be here.
Hopefully you can hear Chris as well now. We have a great show tonight. We are going to be diving into Wild's End. We have some, great videos and some assets talking about how we built the zone, how we're building the zone, and basically some points of interest and things that we just want to kind of show you. Chris,
I forgot my chair before the stream today, so I really can't. I can't rag on him too hard.
I'm excited about this because
how do you forget a chair?
Showing off more of the world is one of my favorite things. So I'm ready to dive in.
Awesome. So let's cue up this video here. I'm actually going to start by talking a little bit about Wild's End in general. This is from the book of J.N. Gerhardt, our lead writer, and this is what he has to say about Wild's End as a whole. For centuries, Wild's End was said to be the last untamed corner of King's Reach, with thick trees and exaggerated grasses, leaves as wide as boulders, and insects as big as a bear. It was as if the whole place had a different soul entirely, a realm designed to swallow the unwary traveler whole. It is here the halflings made their home of Sahirith, high up in those massive trees. While the land has many threats, dark, ethereal, and ancient, it is not a predatory place. Instead, Wild's End is becoming more closely aligned with halfling nature. With each passing year, new life seems to kick like feet against the womb, growing even more distant from its counterparts on King's Reach. So, Chris, what are we looking at here?
We are looking at the beginnings of the Wild's End development, this zone. So, some of the things that I'd like to say about this is we're building Wild's End to be a place that sets a few specific kinds of mark for the worlds of Terminus. We're trying to set a couple of foundational points here for players to experience. One is beauty and vibrancy. When you enter Wild's End, we want it to be kind of in just an absolute overload almost of beauty. talk about lushness, talk about the denseness of the environment, the colors, the shapes, the life. Another thing that we're wanting to really kind of really emphasize in this zone is the context of juxtaposition. I think this will become more clear as we go through the stream, but from everything from like the diminutive halflings woven into this giant-sized environment, the aforementioned beauty I was talking about nestled together with this nightmarish landscape in certain particular areas. It really is meant to be a wild zone, and part of that is really accentuating some of this juxtaposition. Another major aspect is the openness. Obviously, Wild's End kind of sits deeply into this vast seascape. There's very interesting land-water relationships in the zone that we'll be talking about more throughout the night as well. I think for some, Wild's End may be the first place that really solidifies the sense that Pantheon is being created as a cohesive, genuine world. And I think that'll become more clear as we go along. And then finally, the exotic nature of the zone. So we're talking about lushness, we're talking about vibrancy, but there really is kind of an exotic nature. And so let's go to the first slide and we'll start kind of unpacking that piece a little bit. So in reaching for that exotic feel, we're going to take a look first at some of the sketches of this supersized botany that you're going to find in Wild's End. We're designing Wild's End to have a supersized feel through most of its location. It's important, by the way, when we show concept art like this, sketches, to note the scale reference. Jared has placed there on the left-hand side of this image a human scale reference to give you a sense of how large this plant life.
It's like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
So you're going to notice right away that this zone is just massive in terms of these different botanical elements. Let's go to the next slide. We also have the tree life of Wild's End. So this is what's establishing our canopy. It's going to help anchor the aesthetic of the zone, particularly with what we're seeing here, the Cenalan tree or the sorta jungle fig tree. That's how the halflings pronounce it in their Kiri language.
It's sorta jungle.
You can probably start to tell we're really looking to drive forward this jungle-like aesthetic for Wild's End. Dense trees with large root systems, the vines, the kind of the layered and terraced approach of the tree tops and how the canopy is built out. Lots of opportunity for exploration here. Of course, anything that you see like this, the climbing system is going to play into that.
Look at the little human at the bottom.
These trees and discover whatever might be up there. Also note the scale reference again with the human standing next to the base of the tree, just to get a sense of how large this area is. And these are the small trees. These are the smaller versions of the trees. When we get to the tower trees that make up Sorhireth, we'll see something pretty otherworldly. Let's go to the third slide here. Yeah. So this slide is important for a few reasons. First of all, it's a snapshot of the entrance to the Wild's End zone. So as you travel east across the Eastern Plains, you're eventually going to come upon this site with this beautiful, massive Cenalan tree welcoming you into the wild. So this is an example of like these kind of transitionary areas that are going to bring you from one landscape into the other. And if you look closely, you can see in the distance the tops of the tower trees, and that's actually where Sorhireth sits. The second thing to highlight here is the role that an image like this plays in our zone development process. We refer to images like this as red drawovers. It's pretty technical term. But if you look closely enough, you can see the grid lines of our Graybox mesh in certain spots, especially in the foreground. If you look at the terrain of the foreground, you can notice in some areas kind of the little check mark grid lines. And that's because this is an actual image, like an in-game screenshot that Jared, our lead concept artist, takes and literally draws over to kind of fully reveal the intended aesthetic of the area. So we're taking into account, again, the Graybox mesh and the shapes that we've established with the Graybox, which we saw in the previous video we showed. And then Jared is drawing over that the intended flora, not only the large scale broad stroke silhouettes and shapes, but also, as you can see, down to the very details. And so, as you can imagine, this gives us a huge help and a huge leg up when it comes to the world building process when we go to actually build this stuff out.
This is something they've seen before with other zones that we've done too, right? Where it's like we've started with the draw over and you can see the result currently in game, right? There are some zones we've done that before in the past.
Absolutely.
Fairthale, obviously, being a big one.
Yep. We can go ahead and let the slides auto at this point too. But yeah, so this, that kind of serves a little bit as an overview of what the beginning of the creation of the zone was like for us. Lots of design meetings, lots of meetings covering aesthetic, everything from palette to, what kind of trees, what kind of flora, really nailing the scale of this area. So we wanted a good sense of how large these objects, the trees, the rocks, and everything else would compare to the player.
I love those colors.
Sure really hit that sense of size and kind of that supersized sense of the zone. And we're just kind of cycling through a lot of the other concept art that we've put together, lots of mood paints, things that are helping us establish the atmosphere and the palette and the aesthetic of the zone. So yeah.
And then so you can also see in that one draw over the hut or the dwellings of the halflings and the scale compared to the waterfall. And we're going to head into Sohireth now a little bit and talk about how we're developing the halfling city.
Yeah, and I want to one thing I want to just mention here too, real quick, as this video is playing. Scale is incredibly deceptive in shots like this. Even internally, we have kind of processes in place to recalibrate the mind to remember the scale. And so, for example, we're flying over the zone right now, and it's hard to tell how big these things are, how small the player is, how large this actually is. But I can tell you, having done it myself, running on foot from the very southern tip to the zone end takes about 20 minutes to run on foot the length of this zone. So
that's one zone,
a massive area, and that's
with no mobs.
Obviously, we're wanting to build Terminus to be a very large area overall. This is one of 12 zones that eventually will make up the continent of Kingsreach, and all of them are shaping up to be around that size, if not larger. Okay, let's go into the next slide. So we're going to start taking a look now at some of the concept art that is informing the city, the halfling city of Sohireth. One of the really unique aspects of this city is that it's built into the tower trees, the mighty Ulan tree, and the halflings have built. We'll see it in a few images later on. We can cycle through these, by the way. We'll see it, as we look at some of the other concept art pieces, that there's pretty cool system of platforms and supports and different things that allow the halflings to kind of build these cities out into this tree. So the tree you're seeing now, these tower oak, you can see how the branches and kind of the way that this tree grows, that there's lots of natural kind of platforms. And so what the halflings have done is they've taken those, cleared some of them out, and kind of stuck with the same overall natural design and layout of the tree and building their platforms.
Oh, and then I saw the lift. I mean, really, how else would they get really up and
cool, down? Halfling flavored means of traversing and maneuvering around those areas. So in general, I'm in love with Sohireth. I really love this city. And probably my favorite part right now is all the ways that we're going to be able to capture that youthful, whimsical halfling nature. Everything from slingshot lifts to zip lines to base jumping into the water below the city. It's just going to be a very fun and flavorful city, and is really going to capture.
Did he just say slingshot?
That sense of being
lift?
A very Peter Pan, Lost Boys kind of culture that the halflings exude. You also notice a trend here with how we're developing each area. So typically, we're starting with pencil sketches to rough out the shape, the scale, the layout. Then we move into the Graybox process to support the layout and placement of the intended shape and area based on design. And then we move into red drawovers. And then let's stop when we get to the next render shot. Let's stop on that for a second, because that's one thing you'll notice that's different here in this collection of images is we actually are included some of the renderings. So the image you're seeing now is one of those render shots of the halfling dwelling. And when we're ready to bring a particular asset all the way home, so to speak, we move that asset into rendering. And with a fully rendered piece of concept art like this, it's informing everything that the 3D artist needs to know about palette, textures, the materials, like is the surface smooth? Is it rough? Is it shiny? Is it dull? Is it dry? Is it wet? So on. And you can go to the next render. These renders do a lot for really bringing these pieces to life. And then, of course, the 3D artist is able to take these renders and, create things to look like this. So it's a pretty cool process from start to finish. It's a lot of fun to see the way that all of these things really flow together as an overall process. And with the renders especially, you can start to see a lot of the intended flavor, the detail, all the things that are the smaller touches and that we really appreciate, as we play these games and take time to notice, some of the detail in these things. It really comes to life in the renders.
The halflings in particular, because they have such a vibrant culture that it comes out visually as well, in the dwellings and in their color palette that we, that juxtaposed against the natural woods and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So we're gonna go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
I was just gonna say we're gonna kind of head over from Sohirith, and we're gonna head over to make our way over to the Galdassi ruins at some point. But this is the sort of in between going from Sohirith to the ruins.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Let's go ahead. That's actually the shot right that you're seeing now is the southern side looking to the north, on the southern side of Sohirith. And behind us, deeper to the south, is where you would come across the Galdassi giant ruin. So why don't you give us a little insight into that, David?
Sure can. This again comes from the book of J.N. Gerhardt. Rising up from the layers of Wild End are the splinters of a long-forgotten power. The remnants of a tribe of giants known as the Galdassi are all that remains of a mighty and mysterious people. What ushered in their downfall or hastened their abandonment of these lands remains sealed within their strange inscriptions. Otherwise, the towering fragments they left behind are more like rotting timbers than tell-all tombstones. Got away with words, huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think it's pretty telling when the gigantic otherworldly trees that make up the literal foundation of the entire halfling city have been felled and cut down as lumber for the Galdassi giants. This is a massive, these are massive giants. And so, of course, the ruins of their city, if you will, are going to be absolutely massive. This is one of those places where, again, scale can be very deceptive. And so, when you think about the emphasis we place on exploration, things like the climbing system and other methods to maneuver and traverse in special ways around the environment, this is an example of an area that, starting out as a halfling, not a walk in the park to get this far south. But should you survive and make it to this area, there's some aspects of it that you could explore. But when you really want to get to the top of some of these structures and climb the Galdassi rise here that heads up the side of the mountain, that's going to require some of that special traversal, things like a higher climbing skill and whatnot, to be able to see all of this area. The jungle and the canopy of Wild's End is incredibly dense in certain areas. not to mention the aggressive creatures and plant life that inhabits this entire area. So like I said, don't expect to arrive at this area easily, but I expect it to be a very significant moment of kind of putting the player in their place, so to speak, when you stand at the base of some of these ruins and you're struck with how massive these structures are and how massive, therefore, these giants must be, and therefore how massive much other creatures on Terminus be if the likes of these could have existed at one time. That's the kind of storytelling, environmental storytelling. That's the kind of expectation we're wanting to sow into players, even in these starting areas where you're able to taste certain things that kind of prick you on the inside a little bit and mark you with a sense of, man, I'm just really small. there's must be really amazing, grand, powerful things that exist in this world, and I love how well this does that. The other thing I want to say quickly is these ruins in the lower area rise along the mountain behind Sorhirith, forming the Galdassi Rise, as we've seen a few times here. And I want to highlight one thing that we see at the end of that shot. It doesn't look like much right now, but here's a little bean for you. It's actually incredibly symbolic. When you get to the top of this rise, the path stops overlooking the ocean to the east. And the reason that that's significant is because it's one of the many things pointing to the fact that the eastern portion of Terminus is largely unexplored. And that exploration to the east will become a definite theme as the frail age of Terminus marches onward. So I love that area of the rise. I love that it kind of ends. It's this vestigial ruins that rise up seemingly to nowhere, and yet it's very symbolic, looking out over the Eastern Ocean as kind of a way of, calling out to the players. There are things over there to be known.
I think the scale in general is something, when we were originally talking about designing zones, that we felt were missing from other games that we had been playing recently, because that immersion factor, that you're a small little thing in this giant world, really plays a part into Terminus as a whole. And I think here within the ruins and the size of, you saw the scale of the figures compared to the trees in Sorhirith. I think this zone really shows off what we're kind of going for sure.
Absolutely.
So we're gonna head on over from the Galdassi ruins over to the well pond. And here's what Jayon says about the well pond. In the midst of the swirling storm of Wild Zen sits the tranquil eye known as the well pond. A wide but manageable body of water up top, the well pond is so named because it is said to have no true bottom, as if it were a well dug by gods. Placid and jade upon its surface, the well pond owes its strange and mesmerizing beauty to the mixture of waters it contains. Runoff from rains, streams from a subsurface water table, and inflowing currents from the seas. So I'm really super excited about this part, because you talk about scale and talk about depth of the world. I think the well pond is a perfect example. So let's kind of get into that here.
Yeah, so to throw out another interesting bit of information here, as we've moved into our HDRP process, or as we've begun work on that process, we've had to do, for the train streaming tech especially, we've had to really lock in the some of the measurements and scale and the actual kind of water level of the entire world, so to speak. And in doing so, we have given ourselves 3,000 meters of elevation, both up and down. And it's very difficult to kind of describe how big that is. But in game terms, in Pantheon's world, it's absolutely massive. And so what that means for us is that the kind of depths that we're able to dig into is also the kind of heights that we're able to climb to. And the well pond, as David said, and as Jayon has written, like it is, I'll just say this, not all lakes, not all bodies of water on Terminus are created.
Good eye. I think that is
Let's
that
go ahead
is
and head
a human
to
for
the
scale. That
profile
little
sketch and
dot.
Take a look here. Yeah, if you haven't mentioned or if you haven't noticed already, there's a little tiny halfling standing
it's a
by
halfling.
the edge of the well pond as it
Wow.
zooms in. So you get a little sense of how, again, the scale of this area. So we're seeing here a draw over and kind of a better sense of, this isn't a normal water hole. This is there's a lot of really interesting things going on even around the surface of the well pond to make it stand out and look very unique. Let's go to the pencil sketch though. I want us to show okay. So what you're seeing here is actually a profile view of the well pond. And again, if you look closely, you can see some scale reference here to show how deep this area is. And what I really want to highlight here, even though this is one kind of aspect, one kind of perspective of the well pond, is how really a good sense of how we're wanting to approach our underwater, the underwater aspects of Pantheon as well. In making Pantheon to be like a world that you are inhabiting and exploring, we want our underwater areas to feel very very untamed and very, very wild and very beautiful, but also very treacherous. You can imagine with limited air supply, you can imagine getting down to the bottom here and swimming up in the murky depths up into one of these air pockets, and then it's like, how do I get out of here? And of course, there's going to be items, there's going to be spells. It's a fantasy game, and so there's lots of cool ways to help with that, both in improving your vision underwater, light sources that work, well underwater, but also just exploring this area and learning this area and brokering that knowledge when it comes to, any number of ways. I mean, you see at the very bottom here, the right and left side, you've got essentially pathways that don't terminate where you can see. They go on somewhere, and there's just incredible opportunity for us to build underwater areas that are very expansive, very immersive, and could lead to some really wonderful things. So, but
it's like a whole other zone in a zone.
We wanted to show this profile view to just give you a sense. You can see at the very, very top there on the right, you can barely make out the human for scale ref, and give you a sense of
that's
how deep we're looking here.
That's insane.
And then you'll notice some ruins there at the bottom. I'm not going to spoil what that is, why that's there, unless there's enough there to read to get a sense. But lots of wonderful things to discover in these areas.
I think what attracts me to it is, I think in a lot of underwater environments and other games, it's been more of a horizontal thing versus a vertical. And you talked a little bit about the depth that we have and the ability to go deeper. And I think what I love about this is you can just a perfect example of how deep we're going and how different it will be from any other underwater experience you've had in any other game.
Absolutely, that's absolutely right. I think we have talked about that a few times before, where typically you'll see overland content basically just put underwater. So you do the same thing you do above the surface, you just do it underwater. And with Pantheon, we're really wanting to capture that sense of underwater first and foremost being about exploration and feeling more like an expanse, and in that sense, kind of alien to what you would see and experience on the surface. Got to give a shout out to games like Subnautica that have really kind of captured in pretty powerful ways what an underwater experience can be like. And while you won't see, the degree of realistic physics and things like that in Pantheon, there's ways that we can approach aspects like that, including things like underwater currents, a more realistic breathing system, obviously a skill system devoted to underwater effectiveness and ability to swim, how much breath you have, how long you can hold it. Like I said, spells, certain items that can improve that. But we really want it to be more about exploration again. And when you do encounter something under the water, it should feel more intense or more interesting. And that's really the key. Is underwater just needs to be a different place. And so everything that's happening sonically, everything that's happening visually, the way your character moves, the kind of things you find, we all want that to serve a really unique underwater experience.
Awesome. So now we're going to head over to, well, I'll let you take this one, TP, because, I think you'll JN doesn't have anything, and I think you'll nail it.
I'm not going to say a whole lot about this. I mean, even as you can see in the gray box here, this is intentionally we're not showing a whole lot of this area because, again, we don't want to give away where this is necessarily exactly, and we don't want to give away too much about what this is. But this is the gate, and you've gotten a taste of wraiths in Halnir Cave, but if you've ever wondered where the greatest concentration, perhaps even the source of wraiths and wraithdom, as it were, on Terminus was, you would be speaking of the gate. And I'm excited about this dungeon because it's one of our highest level non-raid dungeons that we have planned for launch. So this would be a place that you're really, kind of excited to be able to get to and go into and experience as a higher level player. And it's going to be, I mean, just exciting and treacherous to the max. I mean, lots of really fun surprises we have in store for this zone. There's a very, very cool aesthetic when you're kind of basing it around the wraiths, and really an opportunity here to learn.
It looks like
are
one of those boxes is 1 meter, by the way.
They're
if I'm reading it correctly.
You've got, mortals, mortal humanoids, you've got undead, but wraiths are unmortal. And there's a unique way that there's a unique aspect to what they are and how they are that this dungeon will kind of unfold that for the player, especially for keepers who are able to really, again, peer more deeply into what's going on. So I'm excited to see that lore and that context kind of unfold as players are able to experience the gate.
I didn't want to drop too many beans here, but can you talk a little bit about how environmentally and just the feel of the dungeon will feel compared to something like Halnir Cave?
Sure. Well, for one thing, you've got a lot of, inherent verticality here because it is built into an actual mountain. And so you can expect there to be some pretty significant changes in elevation inside of the gate. You've also, got it kind of built into a very close water source, as we've seen with the well pond, and the fact that going back to that first flyover of Wild Zen, there's a lot of land-water relationship here. And so it's going to be a very interesting dungeon in terms of how it sprawls, how it is vertically experienced, and the relationship that water has, and not even so much like traversal through water, though that will definitely be present, but also just the way that water is woven into and interacts with the environment is going to, I think, be really interesting for people to experience. Not to mention the fact that when you're talking about a higher level dungeon, you're also talking about, this being the point where players have accumulated a large portion of their arsenal, and a lot of those special traversal abilities give us some really cool freedom to, expect players to be able to do certain things that are a little bit out of the norm. And so you'll see some fun traversal, mechanics going on in here. You'll see, depending on how familiar you are with halflings and halfling lore, there is a very, very deep enmity and kind of war, in a sense, going on between halflings and wraiths, because it was a wraith that cursed the halflings with the curse that they now bear. And so there's this incredible enmity there. But again, halflings in their perpetual youthfulness, it's also a very fun, kind of game in a way to them. And so you can expect there to be a lot of halfling presence and flavor inside of the gate as well.
You can kind of get a little bit of the sense of the approach here, and then in the video, the scale of how big this thing is compared to the player character. And again, this zone, probably more than any of the other zones that we've built so far, really, shows off that verticality and just the grandeur of things.
Absolutely.
So from here, okay. Want to talk a little bit about this?
Well, these are just some kind of general, environmental pieces of some of the area in and around the gate. That the image that you're seeing in the current picture there is not actually the gate. You can look closer behind that, and above that, you can see where the actual entrance to the gate is. So again, just a very massive, sprawling area. Lots of opportunity for caves and little nooks and crannies to be found and explored. It is just a hallmark of Pantheon. It's the same way that you feel when you go for a hike, and there's the trail, but things are catching your eye, and you see a cliff, you see an overhang, you see something that just looks interesting, and before you know it, you're off on an adventure, just kind of seeing what you can find. And that's one of the ways I would love, for people to expect the experience of playing Pantheon to be is this true sense of adventure. It's not a corridor-driven game where you're running down, predefined paths, and over every hill is just another bundle of NPCs to kill. Like this is about genuine exploration. Our job is to make sure that there are things to actually find and discover that are meaningful, special, that are dynamic, and in some sense, to some degree, changing and evolving as time goes on. And it is a very adventure-oriented game.
So we're gonna take a journey from here to probably one of the darker areas of Wild's End. We are going to head to the Mad Moor, and here's what JN says about the Mad Moor. Festering along the western border of its peninsula, the Mad Moor is the dying little sister of verdant Wild's End. With thick rolling fog and poisonous clouds of decay, it is a region of constant dimness, where leafless trees crane down upon travelers like the bones of giants. Beneath the fog there dwells two rival species, one ancient and one very new, each ready to devour trespassers with cold-blooded speed. So,
very cool.
So we're not really so let's just. All right, so this is kind of the where the area is going to be, but let's talk a little bit about what will be in this area, and then we'll get to some of the slides where we get a little more specific.
Yeah, sure. So, if you remember, I said at the beginning, one of the marks of Wild's End that we wanted to leave on the world, and ultimately how you, the player, experience this world, is this sense of extreme juxtaposition that exists, that can exist in a world like Terminus, where there are these this history of these events that cause fragments of these other realms and worlds to kind of take root, as it were, into this, in its own right, ancient, genuine world that is Terminus. And in so doing, you have moments and places where these extreme juxtapositions exist, and that's the Mad Moor is one such example. So, as you can tell, it sits here on the outskirts of one of the most vibrant, lush locations, certainly of King's Reach, if not Terminus as a whole. And the Mad Moor is this festering swamp bog, shallow, kind of fetid water filled with decay, nightmarish creatures, living shadows. It is a very dark, kind of dismal place. And we're going to see here in the next few slides and things we show kind of how a Graybox area like this, where admittedly it's difficult to look at what you're seeing here and see any of that. But we're going to show you, kind of how this actually kind of unfolds. before we do that, or as we do that, really, one of the things I absolutely love about the Mad Moor is the openness, yet the connectedness. And so we'll get back to that in a second. But we're seeing here the first kind of sketch of the Shrive-Wither, the fallen Shrive-Wither. Now, when you see this, we're seeing the fallen version here, and there's a little aspect of it that looks kind of like a little flower, or not a little one, but a large flower shape that's kind of sticking up out of this mangle of vines and would look like veins, and almost this like kind of ribbed spine that's sticking up out of the back. And this is an example. These three different shapes here, you can see it in the top right in the mood paint that's kind of initially capturing this. It is a very stark contrast, this environment, to the rest of Wild's End. Let's go to the next shot. We're going to just keep looking at a few more of these different types of images here. And what I love about these shapes, what I love about the concepts behind these shapes and these objects that exist here, is the kind of silhouettes they represent. When you travel to the Mad Moor and you see things like this in the distance, in the mist, it creates this very foreboding sense of environment. Let's keep rolling through. This is one of my favorite ones here. Oh man, the Bramble Fan Vine. There's just so much that can be done with these different creations and how they can be placed and utilized. And I love, just having the concept, the mood paints kind of attached to these to go through, so you can get a sense again of some of the palette. And
yeah, that looks pretty cool. That almost looks like a magic card, that art up there in the left.
The role of Brendyn here and say, if you like what you're seeing, we are a crowd-funded game, and please head over to PantheonMMO.com and check out our pledge page and help us out along. Sorry, had to be Ben for the day.
Oh, don't be sorry. The homunculi husk, or the Shrive-Wither. This is one of my favorites, and it's because there's just so much gameplay that is involved in a piece like this, both from being able to climb it and the kind of things you can harvest from the tops of it, to the kind of creatures that exist on and around this. Definitely going to be a hallmark piece in this area. So we're going to take a look now at just some of the additional mood paints. Again, these kinds of images that Jared does, it has become one of my favorite parts of the process, because it's not refined. It's not, it's a little rough, a little hazy, but the way that you can start to envision color and atmospheric and layout and space and distance, and the way that these different pieces actually work together when you combine them all together into an environment area, it's just an incredible moment. Because in a way you can start to see, this is what it's going to look like to run through here, to be in here. And then of course the fun of the imagination running wild with what actually lives here, what kind of things will I encounter in this area. The other thing I love about Mad Moor is the land-water relationship. And so there's a lot of very shallow water. This is a bog, kind of shallow swamp type area. But going back to the well pond, there are going to be several pockets in here of very surprisingly deep and abrupt pockets and holes, essentially, in the shallow ground, where again, places to explore. Obviously, in an area like this, need to be very careful about what exists down in there. And then, the story that it all tells. Why does a place like this exist next to beautiful, lush Wild's End? What's the reason for the Mad Moor, and all the just wealth of things to uncover about that?
And what I love is just going from Jared's initial sketches and conversations with Jan about it all starts with the lore, it all starts with the storytelling and the quickness in which he can, knock out these paintings and these ideas, and then watching it transition to, the more refined versions of what the plant life looks like, what the environments look like, to, obviously eventually, a finished product. So, that was amazing. We saw big portions of the land. We saw a lot of gray boxing. I'm just wondering, Chris, is there anything else that we could show just to, a little tease or something that's beyond just a bunch of green and boxes and stuff? Maybe.
I think we could pull that off. We've shown a lot of gray box. We've been developing a lot of the game with Graybox, but it's important that everyone understands that Graybox is a transitional stage, and eventually you get to the point where these assets are created and they're actually put in place. So let's get to the exciting part. Let's take a look at what our development cycle looks like when it comes full circle, with a kind of an introduction to more of a fully realized Mad More. Let's take a look at those now.
Now we're talking. There we go.
So
you guys called it. They had
realized version of what we saw with the sketches. You can see the transition from where it started with Jared's speed paints to
this is actual in game right now,
fully rendered into Unity and all the 3D graphics programs. And here's some some still shots.
I know. I was gonna say, I was like, if they don't actually show like real in-game stuff right now.
Comment on any of this, or
do we have? I think the question is, do we have anything better than still shots? And we do.
I was about to ask that. What do we have? All right.
Wow.
So we have some footage here captured in Unity that's pretty almost game ready in a lot of ways. Obviously there's a lot of detail left to do here, but you can see the shapes starting to take form. You could imagine, being a player in this environment, sort of traversing this sort of bog area within this lush forest. I think I love the like organic nature of the shapes, and just it's super creepy.
Yeah, the lighting like coming through the clouds.
Yeah,
looks really cool too.
I love the area because I love the distance. I love the scale, the expanse. This footage, we did take this directly from inside of Unity, so we're a little bit limited on in terms of like some of the hitchiness of the recording. We've tried to smooth some of that out post-process with our video editing, and you're seeing a little bit of some of that jumpiness in there, but that's purely because of trying to record from the actual source engine. But the reality here is that this really is an area that is starting to come to life. And I think what we really wanted to show off here is, even with just a few of those simple assets that we showed off earlier, we're looking at, an incredibly well-developed area. Yes, it's missing flora, things like ground cover, weeds and reeds and, different things like that. Obviously missing NPCs and, the different, interactable objects in the environment. But what you're seeing here is really a pretty well fleshed out picture of this area and how these shapes are being utilized to create the beginnings of the Mad More. So, left to do here would be things like post-processing to really create a sense of the kind of lighting and the kind of mood that we want to keep driving and dialing in further. But just really excited to show off a little bit of where the gray boxing process eventually will take things.
So yeah, that's there. There you go.
There you go.
A nice little overview of Wild's End. Anything else you want to touch upon about the process at all, or?
No, I'm just excited to share more soon. You know, I'm not going to do like a full patch notes breakdown, but just will say that, you know, the work we've been doing, the terrain and the asset streaming tech and the implementation is now done. The HDRP project conversion, the actual conversion of the project itself is finished, and we're ready to start bringing our current assets, the assets that we've created in-house, into the new HDRP project. It's now ready to receive them. And we're also getting the networking, the current networking that we have, hooked back up so we can start making game clients in the new HDRP project. Once that current networking is, you know, hooked back up, that's when Kyle will transition to actually moving us to the new networking stack. So we're on the verge of beginning that process, and we're making great time. So can't wait to show more. And the strides forward are going to be really, really exciting, I think, for everyone to see.
Yeah, I think just the speed in which things are starting to come along now, or you know, I think everybody's going to be really excited about that. And obviously we'll have more to show soon. I think we did a pretty good sort of general overview of the zone and kind of watching how it develops from a sketch and an idea in JN's mind to, you know, a fully realized 3D area in which players can explore. I'm really excited about this zone. Yeah, I love seeing it come to life.
Oh man, yeah, so excited.
It's gonna be one of the more unique areas in the game for sure. Well, I think that's about. We're a little tight on time here, but we're gonna call it. No questions tonight. We have the newsletter coming up soon. We'll have it'll be a little bit more in depth about some of the things you've seen tonight.
Yeah,
some more
Joppa's excited.
Screenshots that we didn't get the chance, you know, to show, and some interviews, and just that'll be coming out soon. Yeah, anything else from UCP?
No, excited. We are making insanely exciting progress, and I'm really happy, I'm really pleased, and because I know where we're at, but I'm just so excited about where we're going and how close we're getting to some really significant things. So
yeah,
good stuff all around. Onward and upward for sure.
I'm just going to remind everybody, if you liked what you saw tonight, please, we are a crowdfunded game. Head over to pantheonmmo.com and check out our pledges. We'd love to have you. From all of us at VR, thank you very much for tuning in. CP?
You got a song for us?
No song tonight.
No song?
No song.
See, at the beginning of the stream, when we were having the audio issues, that reminded me specifically of what I would call tuning time, when you would be on stage getting ready to play a song and you realize the string's out of tune, and all of a sudden you have to stop, start tuning, and you're having to come up with something to say, fill time. It's a perfect time to write a song, David. Like I said earlier, the emotion, the tension of waiting for the technical issue to be fixed, all the stuff that bubbles up inside, that's where you go get a notepad and like, okay, time. So maybe next time.
That's the well pond.
That's the well pond.
I draw from. I don't have the guitar here. Maybe I'd come up with a little halfling ditty. Maybe I'll save that for a future stream. Awesome. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, everyone. Excited for next time. See you soon.
See you soon.
Well, guys, they did it. I mean, that was great, because the entire the vast majority of that stream, I'm watching, I'm like looking at the Graybox stuff, and the Graybox stuff was great, but I was thinking, like, in the back of my mind that whole time, I was like, I swear to God, if they don't if they don't show some like actual like finalized art assets of, you know, like in-game stuff, I was like, this is gonna be a letdown based on how they were kind of like hyping it up. And yes, I hear what some are saying, that it would have been cool to actually see like a character running around in that finalized area. But I still thought that it was great. Like what they showed looked really good. And also it happened so fast, but the little bit at the end about Joppa just kind of giving a brief update on their progress on like the terrain streaming which I'm pretty sure he said is done, and the HDRP conversion is done, and the network stack seems like that's all coming along a lot faster than I expected. Which that's important stuff. That's hugely like those are massive milestones that'll be really influential on the progress moving forward. So that in and of itself is great news. As far as what we saw in Wild's End, like I said, I think it was great. Yes, they, the teaser they put on Twitter about it being like an action-packed stream, that might have been a little bit of hype, just marketing hyperbole, but what they showed, I mean, it's progress, like, and it looked great. Geeky1678 says, what's being done with HDRP mean? So HDRP is high definition rendering pipeline, and that's just a technical term in Unity. It basically is their lighting system. The lighting system that they've been using for a long time now is actually quite outdated. If I remember correctly, Kyle Olsen, lead programmer, basically said that it was just it's just super primitive, like PlayStation 2 type lighting, basically, and just the way that the game renders the graphics, and so HDRP is a much more high fidelity rendering tool, basically. I'm not explaining it very well, but the short version of it is that it will, once the implementation is complete, the game will just look better. Like, it's just that simple. The lighting will look better. It will all look much more modern, so to speak, which is great. I think it's going to be really interesting when that is kind of revealed on full display for the first time. And because lighting in and of itself, lighting alone has such a profound effect on just the way any game is perceived. Even if, the texture quality and even like the animations and the character models and all that sorts of stuff, if all of that is equal, but you just improve the lighting, like the mood just changes dramatically. And so I think even if people can't put their finger on it, but maybe some people who haven't been really following the game closely for a while, they come back after HDRP is done and they see the game, I think it's going to be pretty striking. I think a lot of the people that have been saying that, Pantheon looks so outdated and crappy, a lot of that is animations. That, yes, animations still need some work, but the other aspect of it, I think, is lighting, and it seems like that's actually something that is going to be making big leaps here in the immediate future. So yeah, that's good stuff. Anyway, what I was talking about with the Graybox, a lot of what we saw is Graybox, but it looked good, and I was thinking, like, it's kind of it was kind of hard to compare. I know K-Lock said that it didn't look anything like what we saw in 2016, aside from the fact that 2016 was Unity assets and this is Graybox, but even just like the layout, for sure it didn't look like anything we saw in 2016, but also at the same time, we really only saw a small portion of it in 2016. Like, we didn't see Sorhireth at all. Like, they were just kind of fighting in one small area. I think it was actually the gate, that general area. But that got me thinking too, though, that a while back they had they had actually done a pretty lengthy write-up about Wild's End and the different like POIs and stuff, and I remembered this, and so I'm actually gonna do a little bit. I'm gonna use this as a little bit of a demo for the Library of Pantheon, because I remembered this. I remember that they had done a write-up about the main locations in Wild's End, but off the top of my head couldn't remember where I had seen that. So this is where the Library of Pantheon comes in that I was talking about at the beginning of the stream, which allows me to have access to anything that the developers have released across their entire development process. So I'm not going to show, it's too early to show the library on screen, but I'm just going to show you how easy it is to find these sorts of things with the Library of Pantheon. So I just did a quick search and already found it in December 2015. This is actually something that is no longer on the Pantheon website, but it has been preserved with the Library of Pantheon, so we can kind of take a step back in time and read about what they were talking about Wild's End in 2015. And the reason I bring this up is because I was remembering a lot of these POIs that they showed in the stream tonight that they were kind of focusing on. A lot of them were POIs that they had been talking about way back in 2015. And the reason I bring that up is just I think it's just interesting that yes, the zone may have been kind of like rearranged a little bit, obviously revamped, but that's not to say that it's been completely redesigned. Do you know what I mean? Where like the appearance of it may look very different, but a lot of the lore and stuff is still intact. They're still using the same lore, the same names, the same type of overall designs. Like we have Sorhireth, which is the Halfling's home city, peculiar city built amidst the massive tower oaks of Wild's End. We've got the well pond. I don't think they talked about the grove grass tonight, but we've got the Mad Moor, the gate, like all this stuff we saw, we saw here tonight. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. I just wanted to point that out. Real quick, that a lot of, I think it's cool that the lore of this area hasn't really changed. They're just kind of taking a new look at its appearance, and like I said, just replacing those placeholder assets with their own in-house assets. But anyway, enough on that. Speaking about the gray boxing, another thing that really stuck out to me was the just sheer size of the zone. And this is another thing that I'm going to pull up with the library here real quick while I'm in the library. This is all fully functional, by the way. If you've been following the Library of Pantheon's development, you'll kind of know where we're at, and I can pull up this. So the library, I'm using it right now. Like I said, I don't really want to put it on screen because it's not finished yet. It still needs to kind of go through some overhauls of its own, as far as usability and appearance goes. But tomorrow I'm going to start moving some mountains in that direction to knock off some big items off of our library to-do list as far to get that ready, but I just pulled this up using the library. This is the terrain map of the continent of Kingsreach. And again, this was released a few months back, and we learned that this is a literal top-down look at the actual terrain of the continent of Kingsreach, which is just one of 3 continents in Terminus. But this is the continent that will be launched, that will be available during alpha, and can see a lot of the same usual suspects, you know, with Thronefast and Avendir's Pass and Fairthale. This is literally looking straight down at the actual in-game terrain. And here we have Wild's End. And this is the actual shape and size of Wild's End. And I thought it was really really interesting that Joppa said that to run, I think he said from like the southern tip of Wild's End to the eastern plains up here takes 20 minutes of just running, you know, and that's not even getting interrupted by attacking mobs or anything. So if you can kind of extrapolate that across the rest of the zone, that's pretty massive. So you got the Mad Moors labeled right here. I'm starting to orient myself, actually. So it seems like the flyover, if I'm not misunderstanding it, that first flyover that we saw kind of coming into Wild's End, it looks like it was starting at the north side and kind of flying in this way. So like Sorhirith would be somewhere over here, and the gate would be somewhere over here. Actually, yes, because so the gate, or you know, you're coming up those. The ruins. The ruins are kind of coming up. What were they called? Galdassi. Am I remembering that correctly? The ruins come up this eastern shore here, and now that I look at it this way, Joppa was talking about that kind of overhang on the eastern shore here, where you're looking out the unexplored, reaches of eastern Kingsreach. That's looking out kind of in the direction of this island that's locked for post-release. So that's kind of cool. So yeah, I wanted to point this out because that kind of gives you hopefully a better sense of scale. And just seeing how tiny the halfling looked, and even those flyover shots, I think they're onto something as far as world size goes. That's it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. Anyway, that should probably be it for me tonight. Like I said, I kind of gotta bail out earlier than I would like tonight, but this was fun as always. Really enjoyed hanging out with you guys. If you have thoughts, I would love to discuss this with you more on Twitter, on Discord. You know, I'm everywhere. You try to reach me. We can chat about this more because there's some pretty significant steps made here tonight. So good stuff. Anyway, I'm gonna head out. I wish you all a very pleasant evening. I will see you around. Once again, I just got to plug my Patreon page and the excellent people that are supporting me over there. Again, if you want to continue this conversation in the BazgrimTV Discord channel, you can head over to patreon.com/BazgrimTV. If just one more person joins the page, that will unlock the Discord channel for everyone. Hopefully that happens soon, and so that I can see you there and we can all have our own place to talk more about Pantheon. So until then, folks, we'll see you. Have a good night. Thanks for watching.